Hello everyone, Nolan West here. So today, the $2 trillion federal stimulus bill has officially passed the U.S. House of Representatives and is now headed on to the president, who's expected to sign it right away. I've already covered a good chunk of this bill in the previous video, so I'm not going to cover that stuff again. The issues I covered before, like the recovery checks and small business loans and things like that, are still in the bill, so that hasn't changed. But today, I'll cover what's included in the rest of the bill. First, the Department of Education will suspend payments on student loans without penalty through September 30th. You know, that's really good because right now not a lot of people can pay, especially students who are. And also the Real ID deadline will be extended until at least September 2021. And that's great news for us. In Minnesota, very few people have gotten their Real ID. And after October 1st of this year, if you didn't have your Real ID compliant driver's license, you weren't going to be allowed to board an airplane with it. But now that has been extended about a year till September 30th of next year. And on the economic front, the Treasury Department will provide $500 billion in loans and loan guarantees and investments. That specifically includes $25 billion for passenger air carriers, $4 billion for cargo air carriers, $17 billion for businesses that work in national security. And the rest of the funds, $454 billion, are given wide latitude to provide loans to businesses, states, and municipalities. There are restrictions on businesses who receive these loans. Those businesses may not issue dividends for up to a year after the loan is paid in full. And they must retain at least 90% of their employment levels to the extent practical through September 30th. The loans also can't last longer than 5 years. And there's a specific provision in the program for direct loans to mid-sized businesses, which are defined as businesses with 500 to 10,000 employees, as well as nonprofit organizations where no payments will be made for the first 6 months the loan is issued. And there is also a Congressional Oversight Commission that will monitor how this money is spent, which is important when you're spending $500 billion. The legislation also prohibits federally elected officials and their immediate family from obtaining funds from this $500 billion program. This provision applies to anyone with a 20% or greater stake in businesses. And this is also important because Congress is not the most reputable bunch. The Defense Department will also get $1.2 billion for the National Guard's coronavirus response. Since the start of the pandemic, over 10,000 National Guard members have been activated across the country. So it's very important the Congress gets these funds to them so they can operate. The package also includes $32 billion in grants to the airline industry. As I'm sure you know already, the airlines have been absolutely destroyed by this pandemic. Each airline has lost at least 50% of their market value. Of that $32 billion, $25 billion is for passenger airlines, $4 billion for cargo airlines, and $3 billion for industry contractors, such as those who handle catering, baggage, ticketing, and aircraft cleaning. And on top of that, there's an additional $25 billion for passenger airlines and an additional $4 billion for cargo airlines that will be available in the form of loans instead of grants. Companies that receive this assistance are barred from making furloughs, pay cuts, or stock buybacks, and from issuing dividends like the other program to investors. It also institutes limits on executive compensation, which is also a good thing when they're getting government money. On the healthcare front, the bill would provide $117 billion for hospitals. It creates a $100 billion public health and social emergency fund, like our COVID fund at the state level. And this will reimburse providers for expenses related to the coronavirus pandemic. About $65 billion of that $100 billion will go to hospitals, with the rest funneled directly to doctors, nurses, and suppliers. The bill also includes housing protections against foreclosures on mortgages and evictions for renters. Anyone facing financial hardship from the coronavirus who has a federally backed mortgage loan will be able to postpone payment for up to 60 days, which can be extended in 4 periods of 30-day increments. The legislation also says that servicers of federally backed mortgages may not begin the foreclosure process for 60 days from March 18th, which is, I mean, we can't have people out on the streets to stop this pandemic. The bill also does not allow fees, penalties, and an additional interest to be charged as a result of delayed payments for any of these. And then landlords with federally backed mortgage loans would also not be allowed to evict their tenants solely for the failure to pay rent for 6 months. And they may not charge fees or penalties for tenants that fail to pay rent during this time. The legislation also provides $450 million for the Emergency Food Assistance Program. This program supplies food banks, which sadly we expect food banks to see far more people as unemployment grows. And lastly, the bill concludes $324 million for the State Department for evacuation expenses, because many Americans were overseas when the pandemic really started, and some of them are still stranded, and we need to get them back home. So that is more or less the rest of the bill that I didn't cover in the last video anyways. There's much more that I didn't cover, but I think I covered about 90% of the bill across these two videos. I hope you found this informative. I mean, I just listed, so I get it. Might not be that entertaining, but I was trying to fit all this information into these videos. So, as always, stay safe and stay healthy. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you later.